Well, things never fundamentally change, do they? Joe Biden, at the Summit for Democracy, invited, of all people, Juan Guaido. That's right. That's a name we've heard kicked around quite a bit these last few years. It's the guy that the U.S. government has chosen to anoint as the president of Venezuela, simply because they just don't like Nicolas Maduro, and they don't want to recognize any kind of left-leaning leader in the world. And another reason, of course, and probably the bigger reason, is because they want Venezuela's oil. But again, most of us paying attention to this issue already knew that. But for those who didn't, Venezuela does have an enormous amount of wealth, oil wealth, that the U.S. corporations want to get their greedy mitts on. And that's why they're interested in putting Juan Guaido in there as the official president, so he can run his country into the ground, starve his people, and give us their oil, just like the Shah of Iran did to us, for us. So, rather than move towards green and renewable energy, Joe Biden is being a good little stooge for the military-industrial complex, for big oil, just so they can make more profit. That's his goal, to make sure that things are set up for those corporations to get more profits. And they don't care who they hurt to get there. This is insane. This is insane. And the U.S. isn't the only country who's trying to recognize Guaido as the president of Venezuela. Jesus Christ. Most people in Venezuela don't even know who this guy is. He was never on any ballot. He was never voted for. Nobody knows him. Nobody knows him down there. The U.S. is just trying to get at their oil. Period. It doesn't matter whether you like Maduro or not. He is the president of the country. Accept it. It's their president, their country. Mind your business. Let them do their own thing. You actually cared about freedom and democracy. You actually cared about letting people do their own thing and finding their own way. You would not be doing this to them. You would not be trying to shove Juan Guaido down the throats of Venezuelans and trying to walk around to convince yourself and the American people that someone who isn't the president of Venezuela is the president of Venezuela. Aye. Only by addressing climate change and getting off of fossil fuels can we even hope to stop this charade. Because, behind the scenes, they're still trying to do the same thing in Iran, of course. And they're trying to do the same thing in Cuba for sugar, right? And now, of course, again in Venezuela for oil. Now, part of the reason for this is because the U.S. dollar is tied to the health of the global oil market, because we worked out a deal with the OPEC countries to where the U.S. dollar is traded, or rather oil on the global market is traded in U.S. dollars, which means that the more oil fields in the world that the U.S. controls, the more global geopolitical power it has. That's why we want to go to these other countries and take their resources, because that gives us more advantage on the global economy, and we can monopolize the cash flow of the world. Like, that's kind of the goal here. But it's absurd. It's not going to last. We have a new competitor now in China, and other countries like Germany, like Russia, like Iran are going to latch on to that. Even North Korea is probably going to get on that action and try to, do something for themselves. But because, really that isolationist approach to living that the North Koreans have done for the last 70 years, it can't last much longer. It just can't. But I really think that the United States needs to stop with this interventionist attitude. Stop trying to force the laissez-faire Wall Street capitalist ways onto other countries that don't want it. You either believe in capitalism or you believe in democracy. You cannot have both. You put two in the same room together, one always leaves, the other one dies. And more often than not, capitalism is the one who walks out and democracy dies. So, again, it goes back to the point of tying capitalism to being American. It's asinine. It's stupid. It's faulty. Because capitalism is all about profit. It's not about a set of principles. It's not about the idea of a nation. It's about how much money one can get for themselves. That is not the same as adhering to the principles of a country. So we really need to rethink our foreign policy again. We need to get people in office who really want to dismantle the military-industrial complex, who want to go the right direction and address climate change, because this is really stupid. It's really childish. It's just really amateur, kind of the way we're doing this thing. We tried this with Castro several times in Cuba. Never worked. We only really succeeded one major time, and that was in Iran. And eventually that came back to bite us as well. So the U.S. has to learn. Leave other countries to do with themselves as they will. Stop trying to impose your will on them. You know, we would have a much better standing throughout the rest of the world. Maybe other countries who don't want to do business with us now would be much more willing to do business with us if we did leave them alone. It's funny how they never think of that, right? It's always got to be domination, like, I got to own it, you know? It's archaic, it's outdated, it really needs to stop. We need to be in a more cooperative atmosphere today because we don't have time for these games.